My name is Claire Whitman, and there's something I've kept buried for far too long. Something that's been clawing at my conscience like rusted nails scraping against glass. Before you pass judgment, just listen. I'm not proud of what happened. And if I could go back in time, maybe I would have made different choices. Or maybe I wouldn't have waited so long to leave. It started on an ordinary Tuesday evening, or at least, that's what it looked like from the outside. My husband, Patrick Whitman, had been acting strange for months. We'd been married almost a decade. We'd shared laughter, road trips, lazy Sundays. But the man I used to curl up with on the couch was slipping away from me piece by piece. He used to be warm, attentive. Now he was cold, calculating, distant in a way that no amount of small talk or romantic gestures could bridge. I kept telling myself he was stressed from work, from life, from the weight of the world, but deep down, I knew something was broken, something inside him, and maybe inside us. That night, he came home with a spark in his eyes, but not the kind I remembered from the early days. It was sharper, darker, like he was carrying a secret that twisted him from the inside. We ate dinner like we always did, roasted chicken, wine, the faint hum of jazz playing in the background. But when I reached for the plates to clear the table, he stopped me. "Claire," he said, his tone tight. "Sit down. I need to talk to you." My heart thumped, one of those instincts that tells you danger is close. Even before the words come, I sat down slowly, setting my fork down with shaking fingers. "I've been thinking," he began, eyes scanning the table instead of meeting mine. "Our marriage, it's gone flat." I blinked. Flat. "We've lost our spark," he said, almost like a line rehearsed from a bad script, and I've found a way to fix it. I held my breath. "There are two guys I've met," he said bluntly. "They're coming over this Saturday, and—" At first, I thought he meant dinner guests, friends from work, a game night, maybe, but there was something twisted in the way he said it. Something that made my stomach turn. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. "They're friends. I want us to spend the night with them, all of us, together." Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's deafening. It's the sound of a crack running straight through the center of your heart. I stared at him, unblinking. He wasn't joking. His expression was hard, expectant, like this was just another thing to tick off his bucket list. "No," I whispered. "Patrick? No." "This is happening, Claire," he said sharply. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. This is what I need." I stared at him, heart pounding, my breath catching in my throat. The room felt suddenly smaller, as if the air had thickened into something I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. Patrick wasn't a monster, was he? "I'm your wife," I said, my voice trembling. "Why would you even think this is okay?" "I've thought about it for a long time," he said, his jaw tight. "This isn't about you not being enough. It's about shaking things up, exploring something new. I've already talked to them. They're coming." I could feel my hands shaking in my lap. He said it like it was no big deal, like we were talking about a dinner reservation or a weekend trip. But this wasn't a game. This wasn't an experiment. This was a betrayal dressed up as an idea of fun. I told him no firmly. I said I couldn't do it, that it wasn't who I was, that if he truly loved me, he wouldn't ask for something so humiliating, so degrading. I thought that would end it. I truly believed that once he saw how shaken I was, how disgusted I felt, he'd come to his senses. But I was wrong. Over the next few days, Patrick changed. He became colder, almost mechanical. He stopped touching me, stopped looking me in the eyes. Our conversations became clipped and shallow, unless they were about Saturday, that night. It was like I didn't exist to him anymore, unless I was agreeing to his plan. I started to question everything: our marriage, our memories, my own sense of reality. Had I missed the signs all along? Was this who he always was, underneath the charm? By Friday, the tension in the house was unbearable. I barely slept, barely ate. I thought about packing a bag and leaving, running to my sister's house or getting a hotel room for the weekend. But I didn't, not because I agreed, but because some part of me still believed he might change his mind, that he might, just maybe, see the damage he was causing. I was wrong again. Saturday evening came faster than I expected. I remember looking at the clock and feeling like time had betrayed me. Every tick of the second hand sounded like a countdown to something I wasn't ready to face. At exactly 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. I sat frozen on the couch, my nails digging into the fabric as if holding onto the cushions would keep me from falling apart. Patrick walked to the door like it was any other night, calm, confident, detached. He opened it, and two tall men stepped into our home. I didn't know their names, hadn't seen a photo, hadn't even heard their voices until that moment, but there they were, laughing, shaking Patrick's hand like they were longtime friends. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the floor, trying to steady my breath. Patrick offered them drinks. They made small talk, sitting casually in the living room while I sat stiffly on the couch, like a statue trapped inside her own skin. I felt their eyes glance toward me now and then, curious, maybe polite, but none of that mattered. To me, they were invaders, not because they were bad people, but because they were part of something I didn't choose. And then Patrick leaned down next to me. His hand found my knee. Warm and heavy. "Claire," he whispered, "it's time." I couldn't lift my head. I felt numb. The air in the room buzzed with pressure, thick with expectation. Patrick's voice was softer now, almost pleading. "Please." I turned to him slowly. For a brief second, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time: vulnerability, fear, desperation. It wasn't just about lust or power. It was about control, about owning something, me. I pulled away. "I can't do this," I whispered. He exhaled sharply, standing up and walking away like he'd just lost a hand in a poker game. Frustrated, silent, the two men exchanged looks. One of them taller, darker, with kind eyes, spoke gently. "If this isn't happening, we can leave." His name, I would later learn, was Marcus, but in that moment, he wasn't a threat. In fact, he looked more uncomfortable than I did. I expected predators, but they were just men, normal men, and somehow that made it worse, because it wasn't them, it was Patrick. It was always Patrick. The silence that followed felt like it could crush bone. Patrick stood near the fireplace, jaw clenched, staring into nothing. I could see his hands twitching slightly, rage barely contained beneath the surface. The two men remained seated, unsure whether to speak or stand. Caught in the awkward gravity of a moment, no one knew how to exit gracefully. And then Patrick turned to me. "If you walk away from this, Claire," he said, voice low and sharp, "we're done." My heart dropped. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a threat, a cold ultimatum, as if our entire marriage, all 10 years of shared dreams, could be reduced to this one grotesque demand. I looked at him, truly looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't see the man I married. I saw someone else entirely, someone who wanted power more than love, someone who would rather destroy me than be alone. I felt tears welling in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. "I've given you everything," he said, stepping closer. "My loyalty, my money, my time. And this is all I ask in return." "This isn't love," I whispered. "It's control." His nostrils flared. His mouth tightened into a bitter line. I thought, for a moment, he might scream, or lunge, or try to beg again, but he did none of those things. He turned away. That was my moment. I stood up slowly. My legs shook beneath me. But I didn't fall. I took one step, then another. I expected him to grab my arm, to stop me, to do something, but he didn't. He just muttered under his breath. Words I couldn't fully hear, but I caught one. "You'll regret this, sir." Maybe I would. Maybe. Walking away meant walking into loneliness, into uncertainty, into a storm I hadn't prepared for. But staying, that would have been a slow, silent death of everything I once was. So I walked out. The night air was cold against my face. I didn't take anything with me. No coat, no bag. Just me, just a heart still beating. And a soul that had finally decided enough was enough. I don't remember how long I walked. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. The streets blurred together. Empty sidewalks. Flickering porch lights. The distant sound of a dog barking somewhere down the block. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have shoes on. Just house slippers. But I kept going, driven by something inside me that finally refused to stay silent. At some point, I found myself standing in front of a familiar house. The porch light was on, casting a soft yellow glow over the steps. It was Sarah's place, my best friend, the one person who had always seen through me, even when I couldn't see myself. I raised my hand and knocked. She opened the door within seconds. Her eyes widened when she saw me, her face instantly shifting from surprise to concern. She didn't ask anything. She didn't need to. She just opened her arms and pulled me in. I broke. There, on her couch, wrapped in a blanket and clinging to a mug of tea I could barely hold. I told her everything, every word, every demand, every moment I had stayed silent when I should have screamed. She didn't interrupt. She didn't look away. She just listened. And when I was done, she said the words I didn't know I needed. "You're safe now." I cried harder. The next few days were a blur. I stayed in Sarah's guest room. I didn't eat much, didn't sleep much either. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I was still heartbroken, still haunted by the version of Patrick I used to love. But I wasn't under his thumb anymore, and that made all the difference. He called, of course, left voicemails. At first, he sounded calm, reasoning, then angry, then desperate. One message even had him crying. I didn't answer a single one. I didn't trust him, not anymore. Weeks passed, slowly, unevenly. Some days I felt stronger, like I could breathe again without guilt pressing on my chest. Other days, I crumbled at the smallest thought of him, of us, of everything we used to be. I tried to distract myself, cleaning, reading, walking. I even looked into therapy. Though I hadn't made the call yet, I knew I needed to rebuild, not just my life, but my identity, because for 10 years, being Patrick's wife had become my definition, and now that part of me was gone. Then came the day I walked into Sarah's kitchen and told her what I had decided. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It was steady, final. Sarah hugged me like she'd been waiting to hear those words. "You're doing the right thing," she whispered. And I believed her. Filing wasn't easy. I had no income of my own. No lawyer at first. Patrick contested everything, claimed I'd abandoned him, that I'd overreacted, that I had imagined it all. He even tried to twist the story, say it was consensual, that I'd agreed, that I'd liked it. But I kept every voicemail, every message, every word that proved otherwise. Eventually, I got legal aid, and the papers went through. The judge granted the divorce on grounds of emotional coercion and psychological abuse. I was free. But freedom didn't feel like fireworks or champagne. It felt quiet, like walking into a room where no one's yelling anymore, like breathing without flinching. I moved into a small apartment not far from Sarah's, started working part-time at a bookstore. Small steps, honest steps, steps that belonged to me. I still thought about Patrick more often than I wanted to admit, not because I missed him, but because I still couldn't believe the man I once loved had tried to turn me into something so hollow. Sometimes, in the quiet moments when I'm folding laundry or watching the rain trace lines down the window, I ask myself, how did it get that far? How did love turn into control? How did a marriage that started with whispered promises and soft laughter end with ultimatums and emotional warfare? I don't have all the answers. Maybe I never will. But I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Love without respect isn't love. Desire without consent is not intimacy. And silence in the face of coercion is not peace, it's captivity. People ask me if I've forgiven him. The truth, I don't know. Some days, I feel like I have. Other days, the memory of his voice, his hand gripping my knee, makes my skin crawl. But I've forgiven myself for staying too long, for doubting my instincts, for believing that love meant sacrifice, even at the cost of my own self. Now, I live quietly. I read a lot. I light candles at night and drink tea before bed. I'm not healed, not completely, but I'm healing. And that's enough. Because I know now that I deserve more. I deserve a love that doesn't come with conditions, a voice that doesn't have to fight to be heard, and a life that feels like mine, not a role in someone else's fantasy. My name is Claire Whitman. I walked away. And I didn't look back.